Grace and peace to all you resonating lights out there. God bless you. Thank you so much for joining us. Super excited to be here tonight. Ready for a great conversation with Reverend Juice, who we've been missing, but
I'm revved up, I can tell you that. That was my pistols firing in excitement to be back on the mic with you guys. I've been following along on the stream. I'm grateful and thankful to announce a fantastic birth of my youngest daughter, Charlie Gray, on March the 2nd of this year. She came into the world beautiful, healthy, happy, a little bruised on the face. I don't know what that means in terms of what God's going to reveal to me, but I think there's something to that.
Well,
and maybe we'll get into some of that tonight. I don't know. But mom, baby are very happy, very healthy. Our 3-year-old son is taking on the role of big brother gracefully,
nice.
And we're thankful for that. And then my Ava has become the second mom of the house. She's becoming quite the pro this go-round with my youngest. So that's why I've been gone and where my absence has been. I know you all know that from these guys letting you know, but I just wanted to say how thankful and grateful I am for the love and support that some of the followers and people that follow our stream on Facebook and YouTube and elsewhere have sent me and my family in support of a happy and healthy birth and first month in this world. And we couldn't do it without all of you and all of your love. And I'm just grateful to be back here in the hot seat, ready to have some hot talks and rev the engine, so to speak, on this wonderful journey that Michael's been taking us on the past several services and get into some of this playfulness.
Yes. Yeah. Super excited. And congratulations again. It's
Thank
awesome.
you.
And we will be joined by our dear brother Alfred here momentarily. He's behind the scenes for us, setting some things up, so we're thankful for that. Again, please like and subscribe to our page, like the video, share, and if you feel so inclined, or if you're getting something out of this and you feel like this should go on out to other people across the nations, across the globe, please give in the link below. It's in the comments thread. You can click there, go online. Also, you can download the Gathering Echo app, and you can watch all of our videos, see all of our previous messages and talks, as well as be able to give on the app, and you can see our announcements, different events coming up, all that good stuff. So lots of great things happening. We got some stuff that we're launching here in the near future that we're really excited about as well. So please join in, give. Again, we appreciate you. We appreciate you being here.
And remember B, too. He's over across the pond, the Atlantic Ocean in Scotland with his wife and 2 daughters pursuing his theological academic pursuit. That's going to involve a lot of the revelation that we've been uncovering here at the Gathering Echo with all of you, with the childlike and love being at the forefront of the mission of faith and belief. So keep him and his family in your prayers as they're enjoying the countryside and all of the greenery and the old castles and buildings in Edinburgh, Scotland, but as he's there with an honest-to-God sent mission to really accomplish something in academia, in our faith, for our ministry here, for our flock, and for each and every one of you when he comes back and we're able to get into that and share that. We'll probably have a whole series or a set of weeks set out to cover what he uncovers, his unveiling, the apocalyptic moments that he experiences while he's out there doing the will of God. So we're excited about that, and our love and our prayers go out to you, B. We miss you up here. I know I do, especially coming back after a long-awaited pause. So thinking about you and sending my love and good vibes your way.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Love them. Certainly praying for safe travels home. So,
amen.
Welcome, brother.
Welcome to you.
And he appeared amongst them in the midst.
And he said,
"Boo."
What's up?
And he said, "Sup."
So,
what you got for us tonight, bro?
Yeah. I mean, tonight the title of the tonight's stream is Lila, and so from Sunday, I got into this idea of your work as sacrifice, your sacrifice as divine play.
That was good. I like that.
And it, I'll be honest with you, it's difficult to bridge the gap, right? Because it's hard to say that sacrifice is play, or it's hard to understand it as play because of our very poor definition of what play really is, and our understanding of what play is, at least in terms of Western thinking. Whether that's theological or, it's just, literally the word play. When we think of that word, we think of something that is leisurely, that has no purpose, that, accomplishes nothing, that takes us nowhere, that kind of thing. And that it's to some degree that it's useless. There's no point in it. We don't have time for it, all that good stuff, or bad stuff. So I had actually found this article, and so many of the things that I said on Sunday were in the article. And in fact, one of the scripture references that I used in Proverbs chapter 8, verses 23 through 31, was in the article. It was crazy. And I was just like,
what's the name of the article?
That's a great question.
That ain't it right there? A brief note?
No, it's
who wrote the article? Don't know.
The deeper questions into source material.
I don't have it right here in front of me.
Thank you all for tuning in tonight.
I don't have it.
You'll only find this here and wherever he found it.
Google search these few words, and you should be able to find this article.
Oh God!
We're off to a great start. I'm happy to be back.
Listen. It's in here somewhere, but
usually it's at the front, at the top.
I'm going to tell you. It usually is. Okay, the title.
Anybody
of the
ever have
article,
any classes where they use the Socratic method and didn't read before you went to that class? This is what it feels like in that moment. You're searching through the pages, just looking for something.
Did you find
it? I found it.
He found it.
All right. The title of the article is "Playing Straight into God's Hands: A Comparative Study of the Hindu and Christian Understandings of Play," by Advait Praturi, and it was written in 2021.
Shout out. Say it again.
Advait Praturi.
Shout out.
Okay, and this is on the ChristianScholars.com website.
Cool.
So yeah, I just randomly came across this. And what, obviously, the title sparked my interest, but the first little poem that he throws in there was written by I think I'm saying this right, but Rabindranath Tagore, who was the predecessor to the Buddha. Okay, and this is Gitanjali, poem 63. "If this be thy wish, and if this be thy play, Lord, then take this fleeting emptiness of mine, paint it with colors, gild it with gold, float it on the wanton wind, and spread it in varied wonders." And so that was like the first thing that I read, and I was like, duh, this is amazing. And like I said, of course, skipped on into the actual article, and as I was reading or whatever, I came across the scripture reference there in Proverbs 8, and it is verse 23 says, "Ages ago I was set up at the first, before the beginning of the earth," and then continuing on to verse 30, "and I was daily in his delight, rejoicing," or the other translation of that word is playing before him always, playing in his inhabited world and delighting in the human race. That's the NRSV, by the way. So it's this idea that, of course, from Proverbs 8, it's wisdom speaking there. But my understanding of wisdom, at least in the context of Proverbs in the Old Testament, my understanding of wisdom was that of the Logos in the New Testament. So the divine spirit that animates virtually all things, and wisdom is saying, I was always there. I was sort of the wind that was moving through everything that God was doing. I was there. I was delighting in his divine play. And the article that by Praturi kind of takes this, what he calls a Trinitarian pneumatological approach, right? So Trinitarian, we understand, that is a a sect amongst Christians or believers, Christian believers. Pneumatological being that of the Holy Spirit, right? An understanding of the Holy Spirit, not just within Christianity, but within all religions and within all peoples. Okay. And so he takes it he uses that framework. He says, it is the idea that the same Holy Spirit who applies redemption to us and gives us spiritual gifts is also working in the lives of the people of other loyalties. In other words, the question, as finished theologian and professor of systemic theology at Fuller Seminary, Velti-Matti Karkkainen, argues, is not whether the Spirit is at work in other religions, faith communities, ideologies, and so on, but how the Spirit is at work. And he first argues that the spirit of hospitality requires that the Christian be open to criteria drawn from the tradition of the other. So whoever it is that you're dialoguing with, right? This other person from another religion, right? Yeah. And of course, obviously, he's using Hinduism because Prituri is actually a Christian, Indian Christian. He's from India, moved here, or whatever, but he is a believer. He's a Christian believer, but he came from the Hindu faith. And what he tries to do, like this is his mission, this is his work, what he tries to do is he tries to bridge the gap between Hinduism and Christianity. Mm-hmm. So, but he's doing it from a Christocentric point of view, right? Mm-hmm. So again, that Trinitarian pneumatological approach. And then he makes the argument that, of course, disagreements are healthy and robust, that the interreligious dialogue occurs, that differences have to be highlighted, accentuated, and then debated. And as we do that, it's like iron sharpening iron, right? So, but he's drawing on these ideas, and the big piece of the article, or the big idea from the article, is that of Lila, which is the word for play. Mm-hmm. And when it talks about in that poem, it's talking about the play, it's talking about the Lila. Mm-hmm. And he says, within Hinduism, definitions of Lila or play they're not monolithic. So they don't have one meaning. It's not one simple meaning. In the earliest Hindu ritual text, the Vedas, the term Lila is used rather loosely to describe the frolicsome nature of the gods. Okay? So the playful nature of the gods. Much later in the great Hindu monotheisms of South Indian Vaishnavism, Kashmiri Shaivism, and Bengali Shaktism, we begin to see Lila develop as a much more formal concept, especially in Vaishnava thought, with its emphasis on the cult of the playful Krishna. Lila appears as a much more systematic and studied doctrine that informs the core of Vaishnava theology, mythology, mysticism, and soteriology, which is the study of salvation. Okay, so Lila can first be described as in cosmological terms, yes, with reference to divine activity and delight. So properly understood, God does not create the world out of acquisitive desire, but rather in a spirit of freedom, spontaneity, and playfulness. And he cites Ramanuja, who is a 12th century philosopher, Indian philosopher, the great monarch who has no unsatisfied desire, sports enthusiastically for his own amusement, so for fun, right? Indeed, playfulness is viewed as a critical attribute of the Creator God. In early Vaishnavite thought, for instance, the Bhagavata Purana suggests that the central focus of God's activity in creation is Krishna's Lila, or his play, Krishna's play. And then he goes on, he talks about the Lila being operative at three different levels. So cosmological, aesthetic, and mystical. So Shiva's playful, spontaneous freedom is integral to creation and the destruction of the cosmos, even as the faithful worshiper, through their own worshipful play, becomes an active participant in Shiva's delight. and a recipient of Shiva's liberating grace. Another example emerges in Bengali Shakti tradition. The 19th century Bengali poet Ramprasad's articulation of the goddess Shakti's Lila stresses this idea. All this creation is the Mad Mother's play. The three worlds are diluted by her Maya or her illusion. And so, when we hear those types of things, talking about the goddess Shakti, so this feminine spirit, right? It's been attributed with the feminine. We see the creation of the Mad Mother or the chaos, right? And it's the same chaos that we see swirling about in the beginning when we look at Genesis. Mm-hmm. And it is the Spirit of God that broods over the deep. And of course, the Spirit of God, or the Spirit of wisdom, is given this feminine persona.
That Ruach being also the very breath of life.
Yes, yes.
In this time and in this frame.
And the wind, or the wind of the Spirit, right? Like you said, the Ruach, the
stirring
wind.
about. They walked with him in the cool of the day, in the wind, in the air, in what they were breathing, what they were saying with every breath. God was present in those moments, in the atmosphere.
So good. So he says in Ramprasad's poetry, that's the little piece that I just read there, the goddess Shakti is paradoxically represented as both a kind, benevolent goddess and an uncontrollable, chaotic force, not unlike the Holy Spirit, right? So obviously we know that the Spirit of God, the essence of God, is love. But also we see, just like on the day of Pentecost, when the Spirit of God rushes into a room and now everybody's got cloven tongues of fire and they're all speaking in a different language, there's all this, what seems to be chaos ensuing, right?
Depends on who's playing and who's not.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
If it's chaos or if it's play.
Yeah.
I mean, because it was chaos to everybody that
wasn't playing.
Walked up on all the ones in the upper room when they came partying out of there.
These must be drunk.
It was chaos.
These must be drunk.
It was chaos.
Yep.
But that's fascinating. That's a fascinating dynamic because it changes the way you see your own situation, your own life, like your own day to day. So is this just madness that we're incorporated, that we're doing every day? Is this just madness? Is work and our struggle? Is it all just madness and chaos? Or is it the raw materials of your sandbox?
It's good.
It's chaotic potential.
That's good.
That's the Dr. Peterson kind of worldview with his 24 rules, the two books that he wrote. There is
chaos and order.
There is chaos and order. That is the balance of all things. You can call it light, you can call it dark, you can call it good, you can call it evil, you can call it order, you can call it chaos. No matter what you call it, there exists this paradigm, and where we get into the conversation where we really put the meat together with the potatoes is, okay, well, what is the paradigm? Well, there is an interplay between the two. They don't exist as mutually exclusive things.
Good.
In other words, light does not exclusively exist without darkness.
Right.
Good does not exclusively exist without evil. Order does not exclusively exist without chaos. If we think about it in terms of organized sports or games that we play, there is an organizational structure to it. There is an order to it. But once the game begins, it's all chaotic potential.
Yeah.
Who hits the home runs? Who runs in the batters? Who makes it on base? Who doesn't? Who catches the fly ball? Who gets an error? Who doesn't? Or basketball, who sinks the game-winning three?
Yeah.
Who doesn't? Who misses the game-winning shot?
Yep.
Who doesn't? It's who makes it. It's all chaos, but there is a habitable order for that chaos.
So
all right. So
one more thing,
and that gets into like Jonathan Peugeot and what's his name? That wrote the book that did the study with the mice. It might be Peugeot. Piaget, yes. Where you see that even on the base animal instinctive level, there is a need for play.
Yes.
And not just play, but fair play. Play that considers
That's right.
the other playmate.
That's right.
And that's what he found in his study, is that the bigger mouse, he would win the majority of the wrestling matches, but there would be times if that big mouse wanted to keep playing
That's right.
where he'd have to lose to that smaller
Yep.
mouse.
Yep.
Because if the smaller mouse always goes into play and he always gets beat, guess what happens? The small mice stop playing with the big mice, and then they all get depressed and they have issues.
That's why you can't be the smallest fish in the pond. So when you
Right.
go to work or you endeavor to do something, you should strive to be in the, say, top 80 percentile, because you don't want to be the biggest because you get bored.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the smallest because you'll constantly feel defeated, which will create lots of negative emotions, so you'll suffer from depression and anxiety. But you find yourself somewhere in that 50 to 80%, and you're going to feel challenged enough that you're motivated to keep going, but you're going to feel like you're accomplishing enough that you're also motivated to keep going.
Right. It's a more productive use of a bell curve type understanding of where you want to be.
It's good.
In terms of finding the average.
Yep.
And that's where I think the conversation shifts. Psychologically speaking, I think from the humanity perspective, that makes perfect sense. But in terms of the divine, when we're talking about the childlike, average is not what we're called to be.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
And even average doesn't keep you from feeling like you're not meeting the potential God has for you.
Right.
Because you weren't called to be average.
Yep.
You were called to be extraordinary.
It's good.
And all of us are extraordinary. Now, I think when the kingdoms of this world become the kingdoms of heaven, extraordinary becomes the new average.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now everything on the top 20%
Oh man.
that normally you wouldn't be at because you'd be bored, now there is nothing to be bored about because we're all here.
Greater things.
Greater
Well,
works.
Greater work.
Okay.
Right.
So that's the idea of heaven.
And that's
right?
the idea of sacrifice right there. Go ahead.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So if hell is a bottomless pit,
Mhm.
but heaven, right, is and Jacob's ladder is this spiraling staircase, right?
Mhm.
It's not actually a ladder; it's a spiraling staircase.
Yeah.
Well, it's eternally going up.
It could be a
It's
double helix.
it's infinitely,
Yeah.
it's infinitely spiraling upward. So heaven is perfect, but it's getting better.
Right.
So that is, everybody is
How do we know this, Michael?
excellent.
What evidence do you have to support that heaven is always getting better? Is the universe ever expanding or not?
Yeah.
Has it stopped growing?
Mm.
Have stars stopped forming? Have black holes stopped producing new galaxies?
You don't want to take me down this path.
That's exactly where I want to take you down. Welcome. We're on the way. You're in the car. Take your seatbelt off and let your hair
That's
down.
what I talked about with entropy, 2 months ago.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what science says, that the universe is wearing out like an old wore-out motor. But if you have if you have people that have, like George Land gave his life to the contrary, and has the study and the research to back it up. It just hasn't been published, and it hasn't been accepted as a law or anything like that. But when science accepted entropy, it was the same time the church accepted the idea of the rapture.
Wow.
And those two things happen at the same time for our culture. The church accepted rapture, which said all this is wearing out and it's going to end soon. And science accepted that it's entropy and everything's wearing out, and the world is coming, all of it is working its way out and wearing itself out, where George Land says the opposite and says that things are working towards connections. Yeah. All things are connecting, things that have never connected before.
You cast the widest net, you
Right.
get the largest catch.
Right.
We're fishers of men. We're fishers
Right.
of divine beings.
Right.
And the
Divine
reason that science and the church sort of agreed on that all at the same time.
A being, a God that exists outside of those three things.
Mm-hmm.
So not bound by any of the laws, rules, or structures or the physics of the known and ever-expanding universe. If that's the case, then everything having an expiration date, or time being as a vapor, your life being like a vapor, time, we know, limits things. So there is going to be limitations on every star, every planet, every system, every Milky Way, or not every Milky Way, but every galaxy like the Milky Way and others in our universe. We know now from dating, going back in time, we've seen that there is a time before the Great Bang.
Right.
Now, what does the church benefit from having this entropy-type science doctrine incorporated into the rapture? Well, it all becomes about what? Redeeming and salvaging all of this. Taking the expiration date off of the earth.
Right.
Taking the expiration date off of this vessel.
Right.
As if This vessel was designed to house what's inside of it for eternity.
Wow.
And that's not the idea.
Wow.
It's never been the idea. Jesus didn't even demonstrate that idea when he came back in another form.
Come on. Come on.
What he demonstrated was there is more to it than this if you'll be willing to make the proper sacrifices.
Oh, man.
If you'll be willing to lay down your life for others in a divine sense, leaving behind all of your attachment to this.
So what's the sacrifice?
Well, that's the question. What is the proper sacrifice for each and every one of us? We know his story.
Right.
Yeah.
We know how that looks. We've yet to ask the question theologically from an individual standpoint of what your proper sacrifice looks like in the will of God.
Well,
Oftentimes people will be told in church services, in prayer services, you're called.
mm-hmm.
God's going to use you.
Mm-hmm.
For what?
Mm-hmm.
Great question. That, I believe, is the understanding you receive when you pursue what is meaningful.
To you.
When you're making the small sacrifices
Yes.
that lead you to the greater sacrifice.
Yeah.
The ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah.
Because you can't go into a sacrifice blindly.
Mm-hmm.
If you do, what does it accomplish?
Right. Well, so the thing that calls to you,
Right.
Right.
From everlasting, or a time away or apart from time is how the original Hebrew puts it. It's
Yeah.
out of time. So I was set up in a place that exists outside of time itself,
Mm-hmm.
which means there is no matter. There is no space. Well, where are we? Well, I think the middle part, you skip down to verse 30. If we can read this, I mean, if this doesn't send chills down your spine to let you know who you are, I don't know what will.
That's good.
I was set up from everlasting, or I was set up outside of time, space, and matter from the beginning, or ever the earth was. So there was no earth. There were no depths. I was brought forth. And there were no fountains abounding with water. Now that scripture can also be interpreted as there was no female and there was no male to reproduce life on this earth yet.
Mm-hmm.
There were not vessels capable of procreation to give God an opportunity to reveal himself to this world in this time.
Yeah.
It had not happened yet.
Yep.
Before the mountains were settled, before they settled into their place, before the hills, I was brought forth. While as yet he had not made the earth, nor the fields, nor the highest part of the dust of the world, when he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he set a compass upon the face of the depth. Why? Because we're supposed to be aiming at something.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you need a compass if you don't need direction? If you can just fly by the seat of your pants? Because all this talk about no rules and no boundaries and this no limitation thing, hey, that just sounds like you're just out here doing whatever willy-nilly. But before there was any of this, my God made a way for me to find my way through it all.
Yes.
Compass.
Upon the face of the depth, the very face of the same depth and deep that he broods over to create the world from. Genesis 1:1. So before he broods over the deep to bring habitable order out of all potential chaos, he sets a compass first.
It's good.
He gives direction. Linear thought, an idea. A to B. Alpha and Omega. The first and the last.
Yes.
When he established the clouds above, absolutely no good at getting you anywhere if you don't know where you are
Correct.
first.
Correct. Correct.
So if you don't remember who you are, good luck reading that map.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
The map of the divine is gonna look like nonsense. It's gonna
Right.
sound like chaos.
Right.
It's gonna feel like darkness. It's gonna feel like getting lost in a cult or something crazy or something far out there. But if you don't remember who you are, expect it to feel and look that way.
Yep.
so the map tells you all right, this is surely this is surely that, this is surely this is surely that.
Certain.
Then Jesus gives Nicodemus a compass. Jesus gives Nicodemus a compass and says the wind goes where it listeth.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
So the compass tells you what Paul tells you. You must forget what's behind you and press towards the mark.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right? So why do we insist on needing the map? As adults, as humans, as our nature. It's our
Boundaries.
nature to need the map because it keeps all the stuff that's behind us in check, and it keeps us in check. Well, that's all we are. That's our ego.
Yeah.
That's our reputation.
We want somebody to tell us where to go and
Right.
how to get there.
Right?
We
But-
don't want to have to try to figure it out ourselves. We are afraid of the unknown,
Right.
of just taking the compass and saying, which way's north? And the compass decides for us, like in Pirates of the Caribbean. It's not a compass that is actually weighted or magnetized to the earth and whatever else, blah, 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 however compasses really work. But it's a compass that points to what your heart desires
Right.
most.
Well, there you go. That's it. So why do we insist on needing a map? Because we insist on calling this sacrifice more than we call it play.
Yeah.
When it's really the same thing.
It's the same thing.
You give a kid the compass, you give a kid the ability to follow the wind. All right, give a kid Legos. Think of it like this. What I was going to say earlier. So if you're a kid and you're wanting to play with Legos, what would you do if I brought you this perfect, already put together replica of the Batmobile, and I gave it to you as a 3-year-old kid that wanted to play with Legos? That's no fun at all.
Mm-mm.
But I give you a whole box of Legos.
What all does the Batmobile do?
That's a great question.
You're talking to a Batman fan.
No,
here.
but 3-year-old.
No, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
3-year, okay, well, Batmobile is one thing. That's the first thing for whatever reason, I should have bought that a couple years ago. when
Because
they had
it's
it.
awesome.
Right, of course. All right, so I'll go back to my childhood. My dad bought a 57 Chevrolet replica that he wanted me and him to put together and to paint and everything.
Like a model car.
And then I found out that we were going to paint it and make it so it could sit on a shelf. And I didn't want to do it because I wanted to play with the car,
Of course.
Sure.
right?
Of course.
So it's the potential. It's okay because somebody told you to make that replica. Somebody told you that this is what the Legos are supposed to look like. There's the map.
Yeah.
But you give Marshall or you give Harmony or you give Wyatt a whole box of Legos and leave them alone for 3 hours. They're going to make something that nobody's ever made before.
Right.
A mess.
Yep.
A mess.
That's what it'll be.
To you.
Right.
To
Right.
you.
No, I'm doing this.
I know devil's advocate.
Devil's
I
advocate
get it
right now. Yeah.
I get it. But that's the difference between the map and the compass.
Okay,
Right.
but let me read this for you.
All right.
The worshiper, talking about Shakti, okay,
Yeah.
which is, again, the divine chaotic spirit, okay,
Yeah.
the feminine. The worshiper should not expect to control Shakti's Lila or play. For Ramprasad, life itself is a participation in the goddess's play. In these various Hindu traditions, the creation, preservation, and destruction of the world are presented as the spontaneous, free, and playful Lila or play of the gods. Worshippers are freely invited to receive, respond to, and participate in this Lila, and in doing so experience freedom from spiritual bondage.
Wow.
Wow.
I mean, we're dancing all over it. Like you can't expect to control it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like I said the other week, you open up the sails on the ship, and the wind takes the ship wherever it's going.
Well, that's the thing is you can't expect to control it, and you can't expect it to be a map. You can't expect it to work out as you intended it to work out, and that's our grand fault. That's our biggest failure is we look at this opportunity or in this life with Jesus and we think, yes, it will all go as we think it's going to go, and that is as far from the truth as anything I've ever experienced, because it doesn't. You ask the two men on the road to Emmaus. They were talking to Jesus himself, except he was in another form. They didn't know him because he didn't look like they thought he would look like. They weren't. He wasn't the interpretation that they had. He's telling them, "What's going on with y'all? Why are you in a bad mood?" Well, you don't know? Jesus died. Who's Jesus? What's his deal? How do you not know? He was going to save us all, but he didn't. What was he going to save you from? he was going to help us with our map. He was going to help us defeat Rome.
Yeah.
He was going to help us do this great thing.
Man, that's good.
But no, he died, so that's over. And then Jesus opens up the word to them, and they understand and see him for who he is because he's in another form.
Mm-hmm.
So you brought it up just a minute ago.
Yeah.
So what do we have to do? We have to trade in our map for the compass and say that this is not going to look like I thought it was going to look like.
Yeah.
He's not going to look like I thought he was going to look like. I'm not going to look like I thought I was going to look like. And all of a sudden, this sacrifice becomes Lila.
Yeah.
It becomes play. It becomes your opportunity to engage in the dance.
Yeah.
Jesus said it like this, and you brought it up with wisdom. Your teaching on Wisdom Sunday opened up so much for me, a question that I had already had out of Matthew 11 with wisdom. Michael makes the comparison to wisdom with logos and play, right? Mm-hmm. Wisdom can be interpreted as the logos, the living logos, and play, or play. So Jesus says this in Matthew 11, "He that hath an ear, let him hear. But what shall I call this generation like? They're like children sitting in the markets and calling to their fellows and saying, We have piped unto you, and you have not danced. We have mourned unto you, and you have not lamented. For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say, He hath a devil. The Son of Man, or the foal of man, came eating and drinking, and they say, Behold, a man gluttonous and a winebibber, a friend of publicans and sinners." And there's the map. Mm-hmm. So by the map, Jesus was a drunk because they saw him drinking.
Yeah.
By the map, he was a glutton because they saw him eating. But this is
by
what
the
Jesus,
map, he'd missed the mark, and they don't even know what his target is.
But by the compass, here's what he says: wisdom is justified of her children.
Now, I will say this, in terms of, and I want this to be clear because this is what I believe. Mm-hmm. If we're to believe that in that proverb that we are the compass, we are the direction, that is a huge distinction from a psychological understanding of what human beings are capable of. Mm-hmm. What this vessel, this body, this flesh, this skin, bone, brain tissue, all of that, all of the material representation of the divine within is incapable of being the compass.
Okay.
In other words, if you turn because you can't serve God and man.
Yeah.
If you serve man, you are listless. There is no direction or course for your life because you've abandoned being the compass that provides you the true north of the direction of your being and the purpose of your existence and the potential you have for this snapshot of time in matter and space. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I say that because there's a juxtaposition here, and this gets back into sacrificial conversation. There is the juxtaposition of God's will, which is the proper sacrifice, voluntarily, and then there's your will or human will, which is the avoidance of sacrifice or improper sacrifice. Mm-hmm. Now, I've never talked about improper sacrifice before, but on the heels of the Judas message with the dreams of the disciples that were interpreted by Jesus himself, there are improper sacrifices that have been and are still being made in the name of our God.
Yes.
From the days of, exactly, Bishop bringing in with some real truth. From the days of Cain, this has been going on. So not just avoidance of sacrifice and avoidance of religious rite and ritual, but improper sacrifice.
Yep.
And what I think highlights this is the turmoil between Hagar and Sarah. Hagar makes the proper sacrifice. She voluntarily goes with Abraham to see and prove the will of God. Thus, she's the first to conceive, and it elevates her status in the family immediately. Mm-hmm. Because now the Word of God has become a man of God, or the foal of God. And that's for Hagar, who later goes on to become Keturah. Abraham marries her, and they have about a dozen more kids.
Yeah.
So that promise wasn't just ripe one time, it was ripe a baker's dozen times.
Yeah.
We want to talk about a woman of faith. We talk about Keturah. Now, Sarah then comes along. She's avoided the proper sacrifice, but she's the rightful benefactor and progenitor of God's promise. And even though she falls, the guarantor of the promise, the speaker of the Logos, God himself sets the world right anyway and gives her a son of promise. Because Abraham was going to be the father of one nation?
Many.
Oh, it was many.
How did that happen?
So maybe this was already factored into the equation. Now, I don't believe in predestination. I believe in free will. But if God knows human beings, free will can go a plethora of ways. And perhaps the lifetime and the living time of human beings at that time was going to indicate at some point in time you're going to probably be married to multiple people if you outlive the other folks.
Right.
So the chance of more children is going to be possible. I don't know. Wasn't there? I'm going to go agnostic on the question for you.
Or were you there?
Well, it says I was there in Proverbs. Proverbs 8, actually, thanks to Michael. But this proves that children carry on the promise of a future, a better one if we are aligned with the sacred and committed to making the proper sacrifices. As we see in Ishmael, who then reconciles Esau to Jacob from his murderous intent. He becomes the archer who doesn't miss, by the way. The children are our future. This is why we must embrace the childlike character of our origins within ourselves. That is the best way to find alignment with the absolute and be endowed beyond mere sight that sees men and women as separate and distinct from boys and girls. This endowment is vision. A vision that sees us all as the foals of God. And every new manifestation of God brought forth to set our world right in the futures to come. Hamartia comes in, tragic flaw, to err.
What's hamartia for those that don't know?
Hamartia is the Greek word for sin. It's an inherent defect or a shortcoming in the hero of a tragedy who is, in other respects, a superior being favored by the fortunes, or being favored by God. But this archery term, identifying missing the bullseye, is seemingly tied to goal direction and aim, like we were talking about.
Right.
So even the word itself that we use to describe what it is to fall short of the glory of God, even that word takes us back to a compass. It takes us back to a goal. It takes us back to a direction. We're pointed at something today. We are the arrows of the Lord as His children. In fact, our eyes are specifically designed for target specification. Zoom in, hone in on, focus. It's called focal vision. And we use our focal vision to target the aim of our behavior. We are aiming creatures by design. It's on a hunting platform, on a protection platform. Hagar travels a bow shot away to pray for the life of her son Ishmael, and God promises her to make him into a nation. And Ishmael grows up and becomes an archer. This means Ishmael is someone who can take aim at a target and hits the bullseye precisely. The indication that he's a good man. So I say all that to say this. Sorry, a little bit of a buildup.
It's good.
But Nietzsche announces the death of God. And he's immediately lambasted by the church as an atheist. He claims that we would never find enough water to wash away all the blood. The blood shed at Calvary. Death of a God that is willing to give us all life eternally. It wasn't a triumphant proclamation. It was one of utter despair and hopelessness, though. Meaning he believed, and this is where I get into the juxtaposition between the divine compass that we are and the human compass we are not.
Right.
Which is why, if given over to your human proclivities, you will miss the mark. If you give yourself over to your divine proclivities, you will find yourself on the straight and narrow, your path, your footsteps being ordered of the Lord, seeking and saving that which was lost, leaving the 99 and going after the one, and knowing exactly where to go to look for the one. Because you're a compass. You can find it. He believed that our ethical and moral structures would collapse once the foundations were torn out from under them. And the foundation being us and God out of time before creation.
Yep.
That's the foundation of who we are. That's the foundation of being made into the compass that then aligns our moral and ethical structures. And this inherently leads human beings to the creation of ethical and moral structures individually.
Yep.
Or what I would say more appropriately is tribalistically. Because insanity is rare in individuals, but it's much more prevalent in groups and tribes.
Groupthink.
In groupthink. And insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Like human beings circling around arbitrary rules, arbitrary boundaries, arbitrary laws, arbitrary commandments, arbitrary dictates, circling round and round and round and round because they refuse to dig deeper inside themselves and remember who they are.
Yep.
You can't just mold yourself in any old way you want to be. You have a nature that you have to contend with. Once you understand that, you can tolerate the next truth, which is that the ethical structure you need is discoverable. In Sterquilinus Inventor, the thing you need the most is in the last place you want to look for it. Thanks, Dr. Peterson.
Yep.
He finds Nietzsche profoundly wrong in his conclusion, as do I. As the needs continue to rise, confrontation with the unknown and venturing into those deep, dark, undesirable places will lead you to discovery, illumination, and revelation that our God is not dead, but it's by the power of His blood that we find our hope and salvation. It's here that we rebuild and fortify our ethical and moral structures. That is the deferment of gratification. To say, I'm not going to satisfy the pleasures of this life. Why? Because my future is divine.
Yeah.
My future is eternal. And if I think that way and I allow God to order my steps, then what I will represent in this earth is an example for the real future and where the real future belongs. Our children to see, and they will want to walk in the same way.
That's good.
Because in any situation, I can be any form and anything God needs me to be for anyone at any time.
Yeah.
Why? Because I'm a compass.
Yep.
I'm not a man. I'm not skin and flesh and bone and tissue and blood. That's not what I am. That's what houses me. It's what gave me an opportunity to reveal to each and every one of you the God that found me, that pursued me, that turned me around and turned my sight from vision, that removed my dye and removed my color, and still is, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I am not a finished work.
I die daily.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
That's the understanding. But that's what sacrifice is. It's delayed gratification for a better future. And understanding that the future doesn't belong to you in the material sense, because the future, the past, and the present is you in the divine sense. It always has been. It always will be.
Check this out of Gospel of Thomas,
Do it.
saying 70. Jesus said, if you bring forth what is within you, what you have will save you.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you do not have that within you, what you do not have within you will kill you.
Okay. So this is from another article that I found, and it was
This one's called How Mass Helps Me Play Better with My Children.
yeah. This guy's talking about he started going to mass and with his kids, but his kids like to play church at home,
Okay.
so he started doing that with them as well, and that really shifted the way that he perceived his religion as like I said, going to mass and all that good stuff. He said, think about a child's play. It doesn't have any direct purpose. It doesn't create jobs, build anything useful, or create wealth. Kids do it simply because it's fun and interesting to them. Imaginative play is for its own sake. But it also points to an incredibly important fact about us, that humans are about more than mere survival. We're here, and that speaks back to the whole sacrifice for, for tomorrow kind of thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
we learned that we have to sacrifice these
Yeah.
delay gratification, that is, to survive, right? But we're not made for mere survival.
No.
We're here to laugh and love, to seek beauty and goodness, to hope and dream. There is something about the human soul that is more. The theologian Romano Guardini, which I quoted him on Sunday, writes, "This is what play means. It is life pouring itself forth without an aim, seizing upon riches from its own abundant store, significant through the fact of its existence."
Read that last part again.
Life, it is life, play, this is what play is. It is life pouring itself forth without an aim, seizing upon riches from its own abundant store, significant through the fact of its existence.
Wow.
If it's in you,
Jesus said, if you bring forth what is within you, what you have will save you. If you do not have that within you, which you do,
you do.
what you do not have within you will kill you. Because if you don't bring it out from within you, technically you never brought it for anybody else to play with.
Right.
Like the whole creation is groaning for you to bring forth what is within you out so they can play hashtag or slash sacrifice.
Yes.
That's the beauty of what you're saying, that we have to clearly define here.
Yeah.
Because we have people looking at it saying, okay, tell me how the proper sacrifice is play.
Okay, let me read this.
Is it going to answer my question?
It will partly. Of course, neither God's role in play nor his delight are to be confused with superficial happiness. All right?
Okay.
And again, this is the definition of play. That has nothing to do with you being happy in a fleeting moment. It's not hedonic pleasure. Okay? It's not a hedonistic lifestyle, which is, eating and drinking until you're fat and happy and then doing it all again tomorrow. All right. In reflecting on the crucifixion as play, Edgar finds that play is often reduced to only mere pleasure and fun, and instead identifies an agonistic element to the spiritual life that involves very serious play. In other words, he contends there are serious games, and to think of Christ competing for the hearts of humans with the powers and principalities of darkness is neither frivolous nor inappropriate. And yet the purpose of even as serious a game as competing for the hearts and minds of broken humans is ultimately delight. In the words of Isaiah, after he has suffered, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. In short, divine delight, and specifically God's delight for humans, is central to a Christian theology of play.
So it was the joy that was set before him.
Yes.
Okay. So the cross was play in
Yes.
that regard.
Yes. A very serious game.
Sacrifice.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So let me this is the way my mind is breaking this down.
Okay.
And you tell me if I'm wrong.
You're not.
So sacrifice versus play. You're saying the proper sacrifice is play, is Lila.
Yes.
Okay. So am I wrong by saying that it stops being play when you are trying to uphold your ego, which is also trying to uphold this body,
Yes.
which is also trying to uphold the fact that you're some rogue compass
Yes.
using a map?
Yes, because you are using it for the purpose of your aim.
Your small existence that doesn't pick up on your grand existence from
Correct.
the beginning.
Correct.
God's will, proper sacrifice, your will, improper sacrifice.
Improper sacrifice.
That's the juxtaposition
Yes.
of the two.
Yes.
Will you serve God or mammon?
Well, you can't serve both. We know that. We know that to be true. You cannot serve both. And like that's the other thing about it is when you get deeper and deeper and deeper into the psychological phenomenon behind sacrifice, just the transmutation of sacrifice into an increasingly psychological form over time. In other words, we went from actually sacrificing animals on an altar on fire to now we understand it more in a cerebral or cognitive sense, in a more academic way of how do we apply that psychologically to our lives. So now we are capable of making sacrifices in abstract or in abstraction.
Yep.
You don't actually have to go out and commit the act, and then represent that act in rituals, and then lay that out in the story about the act, and then about the rituals that you set up. And then you get to understand, well, why do we do all of that? Well, here's the reason why. Here's what it did for me. Here's what it released and set free in me. To conceptualize the things we want, we let go of the things that are stopping our success and progression forward. To free ourselves from our chains of our original preconceptions.
Map.
That's right. That's laid out fully in the biblical stories, and that is the optimal pathway of being. Karl Popper, he's this philosopher of science. I had this in my notes. In his Darwinian approach to thinking and its nature, he states, the purpose of thinking is to let your thoughts die, not you.
Yeah.
Let me say that again.
Say it again.
Yeah.
The purpose of thinking is to let your thoughts die and not you.
Yeah. Alfred North Whitehall said the same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing.
So you can conjure up an array of potential representations of yourself in the future. You can lay out how those representations may succeed, or how they may fail. You can cull out all the potential yous in the future that fail. And then once you do that, once you kind of lay all of that out there, you lay out your map, what you find is there's a you that doesn't fail. There's a you that embodies the potential yous in the future that succeed. And not just one of them, it's all of them. Bringing them into alignment.
I was just about to say that. Bring every thought into subjection.
As the compass of the Lord. So once you shrug off religious shackles of misinformed eschatology, i.e., the rapture, and embrace that the earth is our inheritance and the fullness thereof, and you begin to realize the vast importance of having a future, or I would say it like this, having children.
I like that. That's true.
Because that is
the future,
the next iteration of God in this material world. And why would we ever stop doing that until time itself ceases? See, there was a time where we did not taste of death before our Big Bang in this material world. And that might melt your noodle a little bit, but good. Let it melt. It needs to.
It needs to.
We existed before that Big Bang. We exist during the era and the eon of this one. There's an idea, at least, that this has happened before, that this is another iteration, or as the Hindus would call it, reincarnation.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
I know. It's tough. We're all good from a religious standpoint when we talk
really
about
messing
the
with my map right now.
Incarnation, but when we put that in front of it.
And resurrection. We're okay with resurrection and incarnation, but when you put those two together.
Let's not blend those two.
My map says otherwise.
That's an unwanted spoonerism. No. Expand your understanding of things. Maybe open your eyes to the idea that there is more to this than we've conceived to this point. And maybe there were civilizations of people who knew these things better than we know them now.
It's like when they were mapping the world, right?
Yeah.
For the first time.
And building the pyramids. Oops. How'd we do that, by the way? Any takers? I know what archaeologists say, and it's all a bunch of bunk. It doesn't work. Scientifically, you can't prove what they say is scientific about how these things exist on our planet. And if human beings, and I'm sorry, I'm going to wax a little hardcore conspiracy theorist here for some, but if human beings can be traced back to 100,000 years, and our history goes back around, 10, 11-ish? 1,000 years from the Younger Dryas period, which just happens to be a cataclysmic event on the earth that floods the world. The Great Deluge, as we would call it in biblical terms. What happened prior to then? We have some books that talk about it, but guess what? It gets us on the verge of, hey, this is weird. This is chaos. This understanding. You shrug off these shackles of misinformation. And again, the future is not just for you. In fact, the future doesn't belong to us. It belongs to our children and our children's children. Abraham and Noah established the proper covenant with God. And for our purposes, a proper contract with being and thrives as a consequence. So what do? They make the proper sacrifice. They put in the work. They do the work which is what sacrifice turns into. They delay their gratification in this life to do something God tells them to do and focuses solely on that mission.
Mm-hmm.
And when they do that, they thrive as a consequence. Noah survives the flood. Abraham is made into the father of many nations.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those promises were kept by God for the work those men did, which became the sacrifices of their lives. Their humanity, their human lives were centered around one purpose. One. And that's the purpose God gave them. That's a good example to follow. But that thriving as a consequence, that's how the world is set right. And God is the guarantor, as I said before. So even if one who establishes a proper covenant falls, like Noah does, because he fell after his great sacrifice, after God kept his promise, he fell. The world will still be set right because it's God who you're making the covenant with.
Mm-hmm.
And God's not going to break his promise. The proper sacrificial attitude creates a psychological state and a social state that is a manifestation of that attitude that decreases the probability that the world will careen into hell and increases the probability that people will live high quality, meaningful lives in a society that is balanced and capable of supporting that balance. The kingdoms of this world become the kingdoms of our world, where we're really from, who we really are. And that will be echoed throughout all of the material world until the material world comes to an end.
A gathering echo.
That's what we're doing. We're gathering those echoes to play out this song until the song no longer needs to be played.
Mm-hmm.
Things come to an end, and we are a part of the generation that doesn't taste of death. And maybe another Big Bang happens, and there is a reiteration of God in a natural or material world.
Yeah.
And again, what is given to that world is a creation that is purposed and designed to be the very compass that leads you back to the source of all life, all breath, all wind, all creation.
Yeah. And, and you said something earlier about, when we talk about the childlike, we talk about the divine play, we talk about all these things. It seems chaotic. It seems like there's no limits, there's no boundaries, there's no, but it's like Gardini said, and this is the guy who, again, his whole shtick was that the liturgy is useless, that it is a playful time. It's a place to come into this creative mode and join in with the divine, in play or in delight. And of course, we see that in both Christianity and Hinduism, that there's this wrestling between, or a tension between good order, right? A good reference here of 1 Corinthians 14, 26 and 33, and then spontaneous participation within the liturgy or within worship or the service, So God's not the author of confusion, but at the same time, when we all come together, everyone has a song or a psalm, but all things should be to the edifying of everyone.
Well, that just changes the way you see that anyway now.
Right.
Listen to this. This is a quote. This is a quote from Hegel, and I think it speaks to exactly what you're saying.
Go.
The life of the Spirit is not the life that shrinks from death and keeps itself untouched by devastation, but rather the life that endures it and maintains itself within it. Oh, man.
That's so good.
Told you I've been waiting to come back.
We can't tell.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So
sorry for my excitement.
Don't be apologizing.
Gardini, he says, within the liturgy you find 1,000 strict and careful directions on the quality of language, gestures, colors, and so on, right? But this ultimately allows one to become like little children in spiritual youth and spontaneity. And it's the idea of, and we talked about this earlier, of playing a game that's set up within the limits of the rules of the game, right? So if you play basketball, if any of you are fans of the NCAA or fans of college basketball, then you've been watching lots of games over the last several weeks.
Until Sunday.
Yeah,
I'm not
I know.
much of a fan now.
The balls got knocked down.
Yeah.
Yep, they couldn't hang. But my Blue Devils couldn't either. So
Neither did my
go
Heels.
Wolfpack. Go Wolfpack.
Yeah.
So
Bring
anyway,
it home. ACC, baby.
Yeah.
Don't ever do that again.
Hey, that's their thing.
I know, but don't ever go whatever it was you
That
just
is-
did.
That's what they do. That's what they
It's
do.
a Pomeranian,
That's what they
even
do.
though his
You
hand is
bark like
already.
It's a Chihuahua. It's
It's
a Chihuahua.
That's bigger than the skull of a Chihuahua already. You need a more manly bark with your hand size. You guys are
Okay,
giant over
so-
here. Speaking of Inoki and text,
so the Genesis story of the garden.
Wait a minute,
right?
you're talking about the games.
I'm talking about the games.
Okay,
yeah.
go.
So the
What game is
Genesis
the garden?
story of the garden,
Mhm.
right? Again, Eden means paradise, a place of abundance, a
Playground.
well-watered place. It's in a garden, right? It's pleasure. It's in a garden. It's freedom. It's in a garden. Well, what's a garden? It's a walled space. In other words, there are borders or there are boundaries,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There are limitations that are set. There are rules to the game, right?
yes.
But once you are set up, once you find yourself set up in the rules of the game, then you can freely play the game. Okay? And now we're not talking about the rules of man, because I've used that language in corporate America in work, right? And I've said, well, we've got to play the game, right? Well, we got to learn to play their game, so then we can play our game. Because if we're playing by their rules and we're flying under their radar, then we can play our own game, right? And that's not what we're talking about. But we are talking about finding whatever the limits are that God has put on us, right? Whatever those limitations are. Who knows what they are, right? It is difficult to find those boundaries. And sometimes when we find those boundaries, we realize that, wait, this was an illusion all along. This was my moment in the cave, right? I'm in yet again another cave. I'm in yet again another space where I've made the walls too small. God said, no, the borders are expanding. They're even further out. And again, this speaks to the idea of heaven. I'm eternally spiraling upward. I am enough, but I'm being made more perfect, or I'm being made better, right? Everything is perfect, and yet it's getting better. It's like music, right? Because music continuously moves upward in its evolution. But again, and I'm saying all of this because there is that question. As a Christian, or as a believer, or as someone who, wants to walk by faith, or faith in Christ, or someone that just wants to live by a religion, right? There is the question of, what are the rules? What are the limitations? What are the boundaries? And yes, you will find the limitations or boundaries within these, writings, whatever they are.
Sure.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the end all be all, right?
Right.
Because we are constantly, as we're playing, which is the pouring out of life, really without aim, at least without a fixed purpose, right? As we're pouring that out, what we realize is what could be and what ought to be,
Right.
all at the same time.
Yeah.
And as we continue to grow within ourselves in the will of God, right? Because again, that was part of Christ's suffering. If there is any way this cup could pass from me, I'd rather do it a different way, but not my will. In other words, not my aim,
Excellent
not my
point.
purpose, not my goal,
Excellent
not
point.
my evasion of or improper sacrifice, but
Excellent.
God, your will be done.
That is-
Father, Abba, your will be done.
Which is the exact opposite of what Cain does, just to go full circle with the story
Yes.
with Abel. It's God comes to Cain.
So good.
He has a conversation
It's
about
in
the
prayer.
battle of
He's
will.
in prayer.
It's a will. Are you going to pray until your sweat becomes great drops of blood
He's
and
not
you
willing to do
drink from the cup to not murder your brother?
He's not willing to do it.
Not willing to do it. So he leans to his will. You can't serve God and man, and he kills. He murders.
He is impregnated by his sin,
Yes.
by hamartia, by missing the mark.
That's the way God puts it. His sin lies at your door like this predatory animal or cat in heat that is waiting for you to open the door so it can come in and have its way with you.
And he joined in a creative union with it
Yes.
and produced
Yes.
murder.
Yes. Well, so and this is the real this is what I think we boil it down to in like the kind of archetypal understanding of it is what's really happening is inside of Cain, he is faced with the light and the darkness within himself.
Yes.
The darkness is that predatory being.
Yep.
It is.
It's the resentment, the hate,
the bitterness, the strife, the wrath, all of it. It's all of the negativity that it could be. And then God in that conversation is revealing all the things that you could be if only you would. These are all the things that are true about you if only you would accept them to be true. Mm-hmm. My will for you is the right will, Kate. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. My will for you not to do this is the right will. Can you tolerate that? Well, what's the measure of his spirit? It's weak.
Yep.
Christ's spirit is great. It's able to withstand. It's able to endure. It's able to tolerate all of that. Where Cain is not because he's incapable.
No.
But because he's unwilling.
Unwilling, yes.
He's unwilling.
So that's what I was going to say.
It's voluntary and involuntary.
Christ's spirit is strong in that moment because he has repeatedly, voluntarily confronted his sin, his hamartia, his missing the point.
And I thought about this too on this same subject is if Christ believes what he's been teaching, that the greatest thing you can do is to lay down your life for another man. Mm-hmm. He knows he's already sent Judas into the viper's den.
Yeah.
If I don't follow through with this, I know what happens to him.
Yep.
And the world doesn't get saved that way.
Yep.
The world doesn't get set right that way. It is a loss for no reason. Oh, can't abide that. Can't abide that. And it makes the moment of the kiss that much more significant.
Yeah.
Because Judas then knows you didn't hang me out to dry. This is really happening.
Yep.
I put my faith in what you asked me to do. I put my faith in this plan. And now I know. Now I know.
Yeah.
The proof of the pudding is in the eating of it. With that first spoonful, now I know this is happening.
Yeah.
He's returning.
It's the ego that caused Cain to do it.
Yeah.
Cain's egotistical, I can't accept that his is better than mine. I can't accept that what I've done is wrong. I can't accept my ego has took such a hit now, God, that I have to act on this because I have to carry my own egotistical way. I have to carry my own ego. I have to uphold my own sacrifice.
The spirit of the church and denominations.
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely.
It's what they have done.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I will not make those same sacrifices. Won't do it.
Yep.
Right.
Even though I've seen it work, even though I've seen God bless it, I won't do it. And now I'm going to form a building.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to build a building. Now I'm going to fill it with people, and I'm going to teach them
Not to do it.
not to do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And to do it my way.
Yep.
So do you know God then?
Man.
To what extent do you know Him?
Not
Because
the playful
many
one.
will cry, Lord, Lord.
Oh.
However, I will tell them, I never knew you.
Mm-hmm.
The false priests that are sacrificing the lives of their congregation, their wives, and their children on this hideous altar. We're all doing it in the name of the Lord, and He did not condone it.
Mm-hmm.
He was not in it.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is to shrug off the religious shackles that tell you what you can't do. And understand this, like the quote I said before, in individuals, insanity is rare.
Yeah.
So what God does for you and how God sets you free and helps you remember who you are isn't for anybody else. It was for you.
That's good.
It was for you. Now, that might inspire others to do as you do.
Yeah.
But that can never become the requirement for all people because we're not all the same.
Nope.
And if you do that in groupthink, guess where you're going to wind up?
Yep.
With a bunch of insanity, a bunch of nonsense, and a bunch of misinformation.
But Jesus said in the Gospel of Thomas, blessed are those who are alone
Ooh.
and chosen,
Ooh.
for you will find the kingdom. For you have come from it, and you will return there again. Blessed are those who are alone
Individual.
and chosen, for you will find the kingdom. For you have come from it, and you will return there again. So, what we're saying is, Cain had the opportunity to play. Christ had the opportunity to play and took it.
Yep.
Cain had the opportunity to make his sacrifice play because he couldn't get past it being sacrificed.
Right.
And that's my question. That's the whole question I'm asking. How is the sacrifice play? Well, it will only become play when you stop seeing it as the sacrifice to maintain your ego or your
Absolutely.
map.
Correct.
Absolutely.
When it's not to save the temple.
That's right.
Stop focusing on saving the temple.
Yep.
The temple is not built to last for eternity. You are an eternal being in a temple with an expiration date.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And it is appointed unto us, unto man, unto this temple once to die.
Mm-hmm.
So you only die once. It's not YOLO. It's Yodo. You only die once. You live every single day. And so with that in mind, if I can end with this, I think this quote ties it up beautifully. To be a sacrifice, to be obedient. To be a sacrifice is to transform one's individual life into something whose significance transcends that individuality. The only thing, and that's by David Wood, the only thing that could be is divinity and alignment with the absolute.
So good.
I want to thank you for setting up this conversation, for getting into so many of the avenues of this conversation. Because in here, I think we have the opportunity to make a difference.
Yeah.
For people to see things in a way they haven't had an opportunity to see them.
Yep.
From a religious perspective they haven't heard before.
Mm-hmm.
From a psychological perspective they aren't educated in.
Yeah.
And that isn't to exalt ourselves above anybody else.
No.
Or to become, as AJ has been putting it, egotistical, because all the information inside of this temple is just information inside of this temple.
Yep.
All of the information of the universe is within the divinity that is me and you and you and all of us.
Yes.
And we need each other for that reason. I need his information. I need what God reveals to him. It does rev my engine because guess what? God doesn't reveal it to me the same way.
Yeah.
So I know when we have a conversation, we are going to expand each other's horizon, the eye of our landscape, the artesian wells that we are, is going to saturate. It is going to satisfy, and it is going to fill.
Yep.
And I couldn't be more grateful for the opportunity to come back tonight and to do that with you guys. AJ's in the back about to close us down, so if you'll repeat with us, I love him.
I love him.
Because he first loved me.
Love me.
Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share the screen for all your friends and family that follow you on social media, because that gets us even greater outreach. Don't forget to download our app, The Gathering Echo, where you can give donations, you can pay your tithes and get an accounting for that, and also access all of our content through all of the streaming apps and streaming services that are available. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys Sunday. That was fun.
That was fun.